There comes a moment in a woman's life when the touch that once thrilled her goes unnoticed, when the flirtation that once sparked a smile falls flat, when the noise of the world of desire, attention, validation becomes unbearable. But this isn't a sign of coldness. It's not indifference. It's evolution. Because the woman who begins to withdraw from desire is not disappearing. She is returning to something far more powerful, herself. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And for a woman, that pain often begins the moment she stops chasing love and starts listening to her own soul. Maybe it starts with a canceled date, a message she doesn't reply to, or a night alone that feels more sacred than lonely. But make no mistake, this isn't weakness. It's the beginning of a transformation. In today's video, we'll explore the hidden process behind this transformation. Why so many women in their 30s, 40s, and beyond are retreating from romantic desire, and why, when they do, they become something society fears: untouchable, unapologetic, and dangerously whole. By the end of this video, you'll understand why women retreat from desire not to escape love, but to redefine it, how abstinence becomes a form of inner rebellion and spiritual clarity, and how Jungian shadow work reveals the woman she was never allowed to be. If you've ever felt the urge to step back from being wanted, if you've ever sensed something deeper awakening behind your silence, then this video is your mirror. Leave a comment below if you felt this shift in your life. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss what your soul has been waiting to hear. Let's begin. Number 1. The quiet withdrawal, when desire feels like noise. It never begins with a scream. It begins with silence. A silence that slips between the moments she used to crave, the compliment that once thrilled her, the kiss that once grounded her, the text that once made her feel seen. Now they feel like noise, not loud, just hollow. And that's the first sign. Not heartbreak, not betrayal, but the slow fading of desire that once felt like proof of her aliveness. She doesn't know how to explain it, because how do you tell someone, "I don't want to be touched, because I'm finally starting to feel myself beneath all the touching"? Carl Jung wrote, "People would do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." But she's done avoiding. Desire no longer feeds her, because for years it wasn't desire. It was survival, the performance of being wanted, the art of becoming the fantasy. She wore the right dress, spoke the right words, softened the rage in her voice, because someone once told her that anger is unattractive. And now, even in the arms of a man who adores her, she feels farther from herself than ever before, because being adored is not the same as being known. And she is tired of being touched by people who have never truly seen her. So she stops chasing, not because she no longer wants love, but because she wants truth more than attention, stillness more than stimulation, depth more than dopamine. To the world, it looks like she's pushing people away, but what she's really doing is pulling herself back in. This is not the end of her sensuality. It is the beginning of her sovereignty. And what happens when she no longer needs the gaze of others to feel alive? She starts seeing herself. But the moment she steps off that stage, the moment she stops performing desirable femininity, something darker begins to rise. A presence that's been buried, waiting. And that's where we go next. Number 2, the shadow awakens. The woman she abandoned to survive. The silence wasn't meant to be peaceful. It was meant to be revealing. Because when a woman withdraws from desire, she doesn't enter a meadow. She enters a cave. And in that cave waits everything she once buried. To be accepted, to be admired, to be loved. The fire she dimmed, so she wouldn't be called too much. The rage she swallowed, so she wouldn't be called unstable. The sensuality she muted, so she wouldn't be mistaken for unworthy. All of it, waiting in the dark like a second self. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now she begins to see what she thought was bad luck was actually self-abandonment in disguise. Every relationship that drained her, every attraction to men who couldn't meet her, they weren't accidents. They were mirrors. She didn't just lose herself in love. She lost herself in the performance of being lovable. And now that the audience is gone, the woman she abandoned begins to speak. Not gently, but with the ferocity of someone who has waited a lifetime to be seen. This is not the sweet version of healing. This is a version where she breaks down in her kitchen because a memory surfaces she never gave herself permission to feel. It is the version where she cries for the teenager who learned to trade truth for attention, where she forgives the woman who chased lovers just to feel a pulse. Because healing isn't always calm. Sometimes it's violent, not toward others, but toward every lie she ever told herself to survive. And when she finally looks in the mirror, she doesn't see someone broken. She sees someone finally becoming whole. The rage, the tears, the hunger, the voice, all of it was hers. She just wasn't allowed to claim it. But now she does. And in doing so, she unlocks the part of her that no longer wants to be chosen. She wants something else now. And that rebellion begins in part 3. Number 3, the rebellion. She no longer wants to be chosen. There comes a moment when a woman stops trying to be beautiful and starts trying to be real, not desirable, not perfect, just true. She doesn't want to be chosen anymore. She wants to choose because she finally sees how many years she spent shrinking, smiling, softening her voice, just to be picked, to be adored, to be claimed like a prize in someone else's story. But she is not a prize. She is a fire, and she's done asking for permission to burn. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And now she understands that privilege cannot be granted by a man. It must be taken by herself. She looks back at every relationship where she dimmed her light to keep him close, where she turned her too much into silence just to feel wanted. And now she's done. She doesn't dress for attraction. She dresses for alignment. She doesn't wait for the call. She listens for her own voice. This is not a woman who is hard to love. This is a woman who refuses to be loved halfway. She doesn't want a man who is fascinated by her beauty, but afraid of her depth. She doesn't want to be rescued. She wants to be mirrored, not worshipped, understood. And if that's too much, then let them go, because she's no longer afraid to lose someone. She's afraid to lose herself. And that is the rebellion, not against men, not against love, but against every system. That taught her to become less, just to be seen as enough. She is not looking to fit in anymore. She's looking to belong to herself. And that means burning the script of "Please love me" and writing a new one. I will not betray myself to be touched. Because once a woman tastes the power of her own truth, she stops waiting to be chosen. She becomes a choice. And that choice leads her straight into the wild. Number 4, the wilderness, where the sacred feminine awakens. No one tells you that the moment you stop asking to be loved, you don't fall apart. You expand. At first, it feels empty, quiet, unfamiliar. You're not anyone's muse, not their fantasy, not their comfort zone. You're just you, but something ancient stirs, something that was buried under years of approval seeking and soft-spoken smiles. And for the first time, you hear it, a voice that doesn't beg, a presence that doesn't bend, a rhythm that doesn't follow the crowd, but follows the moon. Carl Jung once said, "The feminine unconscious is the bridge between consciousness and mystery." And now she's walking that bridge, barefoot, unapologetic, burning in her own truth. She's not wild because she's untamed. She's wild because she's remembered who she was before the world taught her to forget. She starts doing strange things, like saying no without guilt, like dancing alone in silence, like not answering texts that don't honor her time. She stops flirting. She starts feeling. She doesn't seduce. She radiates. The sacred feminine is not soft in the way we were told. She is fierce in her intuition. She is still in her knowing. She doesn't chase love. She attracts truth. Her power is not in her ability to be wanted. Her power is in her refusal to be reduced. She becomes dangerous to systems that profit from her silence, to lovers who only knew how to hold her shadow, but not her soul, because now she's no longer starving. She's no longer surviving. She is rewilding. She becomes unpredictable, not because she's unstable, but because no one can predict a woman who moves from instinct instead of instruction. She speaks less, but when she does, she speaks the kind of truth that cannot be unheard. And though they may call her too much, they will feel her absence like fire. She is no longer playing the game of being palatable. She is the forest, the wind, the bloodline of every woman who once stayed silent, but now howls on the full moon. She does not belong to a man. She does not belong to the past. She belongs to herself. And that wilderness, that deep, sacred, unapologetic wilderness, it is no longer where she hides. It is where she returns. Number 5, the flame. She no longer waits to be touched. She touches. There comes a moment when a woman doesn't wait for desire to knock. She becomes the door. No longer sitting in silence, hoping to be chosen. No longer shrinking her laughter, dimming her truth, softening her edges, just to fit inside a fantasy. Because now, she knows what she holds. And it is not just a body. It is a force. Carl Jung once said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration." And she has integrated every version of herself. The girl who waited, the woman who feared, the lover who gave more than she received. Now, she is not the one being touched. She is the one who touches. She walks into a room and doesn't wonder who will see her. She watches who dares stand still in her fire. She doesn't flirt. She radiates. She doesn't seduce. She summons. Her sexuality is no longer currency. It's ceremony. Her desire isn't hungry. It's holy. She no longer needs to be validated because she has become her own mirror, and she sees clearly now. She sees which men confuse attraction with depth, which lovers only know how to hold her surface, but never dared touch her soul. So she doesn't perform. She doesn't entertain. She embodies. Because true femininity is not docile. It's devotional, not to a man, but to her own expansion. She still feels longing, but it no longer makes her chase. She still feels passion, but it no longer makes her fold, because she finally understands. When a woman knows her worth, her silence becomes louder than any seduction. And when a man meets her, he doesn't feel lust first. He feels awe. She no longer needs to prove that she's lovable. She knows that love is not something she finds, but something she already is. The world taught her to be desirable. Now, she has become undeniable. And that is what it means to touch without needing to be touched. She is a flame, and those who cannot stand the heat were never meant to hold her. She walked away, not from love, but from the illusion of it. She didn't escape. She evolved, and in doing so, she crossed the threshold few dare even to approach. Through every silent night, every unanswered message, every moment of doubt, she didn't get smaller. She got sharper. Still, let's remember her journey. She withdrew, not to disappear, but to listen. She faced her shadow, the unmet parts that screamed beneath politeness. She rebelled, refusing to be chosen like a prize. She entered the wilderness, where she remembered her ancient self. She was reborn, not to be touched, but to touch with presence. And finally, she returned, not as a version of who she was, but as someone who no longer asked to belong, because she is the place others want to return to. Carl Jung wrote, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration." And that is your lesson today. You cannot become whole by denying your hunger, by editing your anger, or you become whole by honoring what you've buried, by welcoming the truth you were taught to fear. So what you do now, start small. Tonight, turn off the noise. Don't scroll. Don't seek. Just sit. Ask yourself, where am I still performing? Where am I still hoping to be chosen by someone, by something, by love? And then, reflect, reclaim. Your silence is not emptiness. It's preparation, a portal. If this story stirred something inside you, don't let it go back to sleep. Comment below, what part of you is waking up? Like this video. If it reminded you of your power, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. And subscribe, because this channel is where souls remember. You were never too much. You were always the fire. And the moment you stop apologizing for your flame, the world will finally see the light. Welcome home. You didn't just return. You became.